If you're feeling bogged down by the impossible expectations or the noise of new year, new me, take a second to pause. Grow Therapy gives you space to slow down, check in, and start the new year from a more grounded place. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans, including Medicaid in some states. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
As we walk through these leadership cliches and lines, the famous ones, the overused ones, the powerful ones, listen for this distinction. Does the idea invite mastery or does it try to replace it?
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 328 and number 19 in our Edge of the Napkin series. Welcome back. Today's conversation might feel a little different. As you listen, you may notice that nothing here is brand new. You've probably heard most of these ideas before. You've probably even quoted a few of them. You might even believe you already know them. And that's exactly where this conversation begins. Because sometimes the most important insights aren't the ones we've never heard. They're the ones we've heard so often that we've stopped returning to them. Today, we're going to walk through some of the most familiar leadership lines out there. Ones that sound right, ones that feel wise, the ones that have even shaped how many of us think about leadership growth and success. And as you listen, you don't need to agree with anything. You don't need to take notes. You don't really need to do anything at all. Just notice what stands out. You might find yourself re-examining an idea that you thought you had mastered. You might notice where something you know hasn't quite become something you live. You might even realize that the next level forward isn't about learning something new, but about practicing something familiar for longer. So wherever you are, take a breath, let the noise settle, and see what this conversation brings back into focus. This is Paper Napkin Wisdom, one idea, one shift, one napkin. Let's go to the edge. Let's dive in. People have been asking me to do this for a while, so I'm going to dive in. We absolutely live in the most informed leadership era in history. More books, more podcasts, more quotes, more frameworks than any leader could possibly live in one lifetime, let alone use. And yet something feels off. We know more than ever. We say the right things. We quote the right people, but we embody less. We confuse motion with progress, exposure with understanding, and volume with mastery. Before we go any further, let me name the paradox that might pop into your head along the way. I'm all about wisdom small enough to fit on a napkin and large enough to change your life. And today, I'm critiquing leadership cliches. I'm not against short ideas. I'm not against simple truths. I'm not even against repetition. In fact, I'm all for it. What I'm critiquing is unearned certainty. A cliche is an idea that feels complete the moment you hear it. It gives you a sensation of wisdom without asking for any commitment. A napkin is different. A napkin isn't a shortcut. It's a compression of something already lived. And so many leaders that I've spoken to have a hard time encapsulating their wisdom on a napkin. It's the same size, but it carries a very different weight. So As we walk through these leadership cliches and lines, the famous ones, the overused ones, the powerful ones, listen for this distinction. Does the idea invite mastery or does it try to replace it? Resist against that temptation. First one, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is the one I really dislike. This line sticks, though, because it goes straight after your identity. It forces a mirror about who you are becoming. Who am I becoming by proximity alone? It's simple, it's provocative, and socially uncomfortable. But misused, it becomes a blunt instrument. People use it to judge relationships instead of examining themselves. They cut people out instead of doing the inner work. They confuse seasons of support with permanent identity, and they forget that sometimes the 5 people around you are there because you are strong, not because you are weak. Environment matters, influence matters, but identity is not outsourced. Everything rises and falls on leadership. This line feels empowering. It places ownership squarely on the leader. No excuses, no hiding, but misused, it distorts reality. Leadership often takes credit for wins created by systems, teams, and people and structure. Leaders take blame for failures shaped by timing, context, or inheritance. Leadership matters enormously, but leadership never operates in isolation. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Clean, memorable, and portable. And incomplete. Influence without responsibility and accountability becomes manipulation. Influence without accountability also becomes ego. Leadership isn't just the ability to move people, it's the willingness to be answerable for where we end up. Be the leader you wish you had. Now, this one sounds noble, aspirational even, but misused, it becomes projection again. You start leading people the way you need it instead of the way they need. Leadership requires empathy, not autobiography. Leadership is the flexibility of behavior, not the rigidity. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Simon Sinek's famous line rehumanized leadership. But it reminded us also that meaning matters, that people want connection, not just transactions, but purpose has quietly become a hiding place. Why doesn't fix broken delivery? Why doesn't repair missed promises? Why opens the door and execution earns trust? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture matters deeply. But misused, this line excuses vagueness. Culture doesn't replace clarity. Culture doesn't eliminate decision-making. Culture amplifies whatever strategy you already have, good or bad. Start with the end in mind. Direction creates focus. Get it. Goals give comfort. Check. But obsession with the end can blind you to what's emerging. Some of the most meaningful growth doesn't come from certainty in the outcome. It comes from engaged exploration and an understanding and alignment with where you are right now. This is where focus, align, act is. Align is in present moment awareness. Engage there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Look, this is sometimes true, and it's sometimes, oftentimes, misleading. Not all wandering is lost. Not all direction is wisdom. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Now, I'm a big belief person. Belief matters a ton. You need to focus on what you want, but belief doesn't erase systems and structure. It doesn't undo trauma. It doesn't level uneven starting lines. Mindset is a multiplier, not a miracle. It requires execution. Can't just sit there on the top of the mountain, mindsetting your way to success. You must act. Focus, align, act. Leaders are readers. This is a big one. Harmless on the surface and aspirational for sure. But reading without reflection is entertainment. Reading without application is storage or virtue signaling. Mastery doesn't come from how much you read. It comes from how often you return and how often you apply and how often you really look at what you're learning. Discipline beats motivation. Look, this is often true, but discipline without meaning becomes burnout. Motivation without structure becomes chaos. One doesn't replace the other. They reinforce each other and they work together. What gets measured gets managed. Measurement absolutely creates focus and maintains focus over the long haul. But what gets over-measured often loses its soul. And what matters most is often hardest to quantify. It's so important to remember that you can A/B test your way out of your body and out of your real reason for doing things, out of your vision, and become something totally different. Your calendar shows your priorities, sometimes. Oftentimes, it shows obligation, survival, or constraint. How you set up that calendar matters. Awareness matters, but so does compassion. So does flexibility of behavior. You can't pour from an empty cup. True. And dangerously overused. Rest without purpose becomes avoidance. Self-care without contribution becomes isolation. The best way to get momentum is to give it away. What got you here won't get you there. Often misquoted, and even more dangerously to who got you here won't get you there. This one matters. The original insight is about behaviors, not people. The distortion turns growth into abandonment. It starts to lay blame as opposed to taking accountability for where we end up. Often, what got you here doesn't need replacing, it needs refinement. It needs subtraction. It needs focus. And who got you here needs loyalty, compassion, flexibility of behavior, and support. Hire slow, fire fast. Love this one a lot. Comes up a lot, but it's often misused because it's decisive in theory and avoidant in practice. Fast firing often hides slow leadership, poor onboarding, unclear expectations, missing feedback, poor hiring practices, incomplete testing and validation of bringing someone on your team. That's a leadership problem, not a hiring problem. A players hire A players, B players hire C players. This flatters fear. Great leaders don't just hire talent, they develop it. They challenge it. They connect with it. They choose connection as the currency for challenge, and they grow alongside of it. People are not letters. They are trajectories. And how your leadership influences their trajectory is what matters. Hire for attitude, train for skill. Helpful until it becomes lazy. Skills matter. Standards matter. Development is not a substitute for discernment. Trust but verify. Balanced in theory, controlling in practice. Used poorly, it becomes verify first, trust later, which quietly says, I don't trust you. I don't believe in you. And leadership is about imparting belief and growing people's belief in themselves. Leadership is about trusting first, not trusting second, not evoking you are not trusted. Clear is kind. True. And incomplete. Clarity without care is cruelty. Care without clarity is confusion. You need challenge and connection to create a true team and to grow together. Here's another one. Fail fast. Failure isn't the goal, learning is. Failing fast without reflection and pause is just noise. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. This is really morally certifying and really endorses hustle culture, right? But it's incomplete. Talent and effort usually win, and ignoring either is wishful thinking. How you do anything is how you do everything. This is sometimes true. And other times it turns humans into machines and moments into character indictments. We're all learning, we're all growing, and we're all becoming who we really are. That requires change. And that doesn't mean that we're stuck into how we do anything. We can change, we can learn. No excuses. This signals toughness, but often shuts down curiosity. Sometimes explanations aren't excuses, they're data. And being curious about the data can get to the heart of what is really going on. Before we move on, let's name what this actually feels like. Because if you've been listening closely, there's a subtle fatigue setting in. Not because the ideas are bad, because there's so many of them. And this is exactly the experience most leaders are living inside. We're told that discipline beats motivation, that you need to manage your energy, not your time. What gets measured gets managed. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Your calendar shows your priorities. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, clear is kind, hire for attitude, train for skill. The problem is well stated and half solved. Comfort is the enemy of progress. No one is coming to save you. Be the leader you wish you had. Fail fast, trust but verify. Culture, eat strategy for breakfast. Start with the end in mind. All of these sound right. Most of them are right in some ways. And still something breaks because leadership doesn't fail from a lack of insight. It fails from fragmentation and a lack of focus. We've tried to live all of it. We adopt systems before reinforcing and connecting with our values, values before behaviors, and behaviors before even our identity. We stack frameworks like furniture in a room that we never sit in. And eventually wisdom becomes noise, not because it isn't true, but because nothing is being practiced long enough to become a reflex, to become our default pattern under stress. And this is what volume does. It creates the illusion of progress while quietly preventing mastery. Here's a story about a seeker who wanted to become a great leader. He traveled to a famous hall filled with teachers. Each room offered wisdom. One taught influence, one taught discipline, one taught culture, one taught systems, and another taught resilience. The seeker moved quickly, voraciously. He nodded, wrote everything down, listened intently, moved on. By the end of the day, his notebook was full. As he prepared to leave, an old man sweeping the floor stopped him. "You've learned a lot," the old man said. "Yes," the seeker said proudly. "I've studied leadership." The old man smiled. "Which room did you return to?" The seeker paused. "I didn't. There were so many to see. Too many to see." The old man nodded. "Then you didn't study leadership," he said. "You visited it." He pointed to a small door at the end of the hall. Inside, one teacher practiced the same lesson with a small group. Every day, the same questions, the same discipline. "What does he teach?" the seeker asked. "The lesson he chose to live," the old man replied. So here's some maybe different, quieter, better lines. "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 punches once, but the man who has practiced one punch 10,000 times." Variety definitely feels impressive, but repetition, while maybe boring, builds power. Mastery looks boring until pressure arrives. Beware the man of one book. Not because he knows less, because the idea knows him. They walk together. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Rushing creates rework. Rework creates delay. Mastery moves calmly, with certainty, and arrives sooner. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your structures and systems. Intentions matter. Design matters more. But systems exist to support humans, not to replace them. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals, they practice until they can't get it wrong. Leadership doesn't fail from ignorance. It fails from inconsistency under pressure. Leadership culture rewards motion, requires busyness in some ways. Real leadership, though, requires commitment. You don't need more ideas. You need fewer ideas practiced longer, lived deeper. And yes, I know the irony. I trade in short ideas. I love simplicity. I believe the wisdom should be small enough to carry with you. And when you understand it, it compresses even further. There's simplicity on this side of complexity, a simple three-integer equation like 1 + 1 = 2, and simplicity on the other side of complexity, which is another three-integer equation that people have been writing about for years, E = mc². One much more complex than the other. But here's a distinction that matters. A cliché ends the conversation. A napkin starts one. A cliché lets you feel wise. A napkin asks you to practice. A cliché says, you've heard this before. A napkin says, come back to this. Let's do this.